What is up, everybody, and welcome to the All NBA Show, part of the All City Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Matez. Legs has the day off. He'll be back on Thursday, but I've got a roundtable of guests for you joining the show. The first one from NOLA.com, my guy, Christian Clark, covering the Pelicans. Christian, what's going on, brother?
Hey, man, it's a beautiful spring day in New Orleans. Can't complain. The Pelicans are playing pretty good basketball. Their players are playing. Things are going pretty good.
They are. Legs and I have talked about this a lot, but the Pelicans are one of the most fascinating and difficult to read teams in the NBA. I have no idea how good they are. Sometimes, every time I go all in on them, they do terrible. So I'm going to be measured. Pelicans fans, I'm doing this for your own good. I'm going to be very measured and under control today about the Pelicans because I don't want to overhype them and have them start to tank. That's at least how I feel, Christian. But before we get into all this, I got to tell you our presenting sponsor is DraftKings. Stay tuned because you'll hear more about DraftKings and all they have to offer throughout this show. DraftKings, the crown is yours. So the Pelicans have won 13 of their last 17, dating all the way back to January 31st, basically the whole month of February and the first half of March. Not a ton of great wins in there. I mean, you play who's in front of you. It's been somewhat of a soft part of the schedule. They beat the Clippers. But if you just kind of assess these last 17 games, how would you grade it? And do you agree that it's been beating up on medium to bad teams? Or do you think there have been more good wins in that stretch?
Yeah, look, I think that's fair to say that like a lot of this has just been fattening up on teams that aren't great, that are, not at full strength. Like they just had this road trip where, they played the Hawks without Trae Young. They played the Sixers without Maxey and Embiid. I mean, they basically just had a 3-0 road trip because, they're playing against some of these teams that don't have their best players. And people in New Orleans are like, we don't care, because that's been the Pelicans' reality for most of their existence as a franchise. Like it feels like the Pelicans are finally having a season where it's like the injury luck is going their way, and they're getting to play some of these teams that are like having some of the same struggles that the Pelicans have had for years and years and years. So I think that's true, but I also think people here are like, hey, we don't care. We know this. We know this problem better than anybody.
And I think through 82 games, it all comes out in the wash. Like everybody has a stretch where the schedule gets a little easier. You catch a break because somebody's out here or there. And as I said, they're winning those games. So it's not like you could complain about them. I don't think, as much as they don't have a ton of great wins, I don't think they have any bad losses. All the teams that they've lost to have been like, okay, I can at least understand that. Let's go through some of the numbers here, though. They're 8th in offensive rating and 6th in defensive rating, 4th in net. I think that would surprise a lot of people. They're ahead in net rating. They're ahead of the Nuggets, the Clippers, the Bucks, and I believe they're one of just 4 teams top 10 in both offensive and defensive rating. And then number 1 in defensive rating since the All-Star break. So these numbers, I think if you were to ask people who are the top 10 teams in net rating, I don't think too many people would have come up with the Pelicans to be top 10 in both. What about those numbers, and what about the defense in particular since the All-Star break? I mean, to me, this is a defensive team with all of the wings they have.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I don't hear discussed enough at the national level. The Pelicans finished 6th in defense last season. It was tied for their best finish in defensive ranking in franchise history. They're 6th again in defense this year. Like, I think even if you had asked people in the Pelicans organization before the start of last season, how good do you think you'll be on offense? How good do you think you'll be on defense? I think a lot of people, even within the team, were like, well, I don't know how we're going to be on defense. I think there was a lot of question marks. Like, that's been a real surprise to me and noteworthy that in back-to-back years, this has been a top 10 defensive team. I mean, this is something I've talked to you about offline. Yeah. I think we're both in agreement that length is just so important in today's NBA with the amount of ground you have to cover. Pelicans get a lot of steals. They're doing a really good job of defending without fouling this year. When you just look at their starting lineup, I feel like, like 4 of those 5 guys are not regarded as positive defenders. I feel like, among like the average basketball fan, Herb Jones is the only guy who's regarded as a positive defender, but like I think they just are fitting well as like a unit. I think Brandon Ingram is like low key having actually a pretty good defensive season.
Interesting.
And they're all just bought in under Willie Green and Jaron Collins, who's basically the team's defensive coordinator.
So much of it is length. I mean, so when you talk about Brandon Ingram, he's 6'9", even longer than that, just when you talk about like his build. And you put the aggregate length on the table there plus athleticism, and I feel like you're 70% the way there. So maybe I think it's possible it's not such a surprise. And then Dyson Daniels, you already had Herb Jones. Trey Murphy, we're going to talk a lot about here in a second. You've got some length and some guys, but Dyson Daniels to me is you supercharge your defense to me when you just add another guy. I know he's like 18, 20 minutes a game. You add another guy at that level who is all about defense and one of the best defenders. So I agree with you that when you look at the starting lineup, it doesn't look like it would be great, but everyone behind the starting lineup, so every staggered lineup you throw out there is going to have probably two monster defenders on the court. At least that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, I mean, like early in the season when the Pelicans had some injury issues, there was a period of games where they started Dyson Daniels and Herb Jones together, and
Right.
those few games went really well for the Pelicans. Dyson is out right now with torn meniscus. He should be back in the next few weeks. But like one of my hot takes is I think Herb Jones is the Pelicans' overall best defender. I actually think Dyson Daniels is the team's best on-ball defender. Like
Mm.
Dyson Daniels is a monster on ball defender. And like from day one, too, one of his very first games, I remember him getting thrown in there against the Mavericks and getting asked to guard Luka. And I think he stole the ball from Luka twice. Like just from the very first basically day he was in NBA, like Dyson has been a plus on ball defender. Like strong guy, moves his feet well, great length, doesn't foul. I mean, I'm just really high on him as a defensive player. There are definitely questions about his offense, but like he's already there defensively.
Do you have to be careful building lineups when he's on the court? I mean, when you talk because of his offense?
Yeah, I think you do. I mean, and like when you just look at the Pelicans' best two players, they're not guys who take 3-pointers too. So I just think it's
Right.
tough to put guys out there with them who aren't really going to be able to space the floor. Like Zion, he's going to take like 4 of every 5 shots within 5 feet of the basket. Brandon Ingram, heavy mid range guy. I just think this like the best players on this team, you have to be really conscientious of putting, shaky 3-point shooters next to them.
So this is kind of what I want to get into. And I have this listed as I formed this segment as why would you buy them and why would you sell them? I'm going to start with why you sell them because I think it creates the most interesting conversation around them. A couple numbers here. First, 26th in clutch offensive rating, 21st in clutch defensive rating. Those things often go hand in hand. If you're not scoring, you're probably getting scored on or you have to foul late. So not great in the clutch. And I think it's because they have such an interesting roster where they have a lot of really great players, but the combination, the exact right fit of those players to me seems a little bit unclear. And you get into Dyson Daniels. I love him on the court, but now, okay, well, can you have him and Herb Jones on and Zion? Okay, it gets a little confusing there. So to me, that's my big question mark for them. Do they actually know what their best lineups are in the clutch? And is those lineups too dependent on the circumstance? Meaning you're not going to go to the same every time. You're going to have to play it by ear, which of course creates confusion. Do you think that is one of the major question marks for this team?
I do. I think you've like put your finger on a concern that like maybe the doubters have about this team, in the playoffs. Like their crunch time offense this season has looked really shaky. I mean, this is a team that operates without a pure point guard. I mean, a lot of teams are like that. They do
Right.
it kind of by committee. Zion is handling a lot of those duties now. Brandon Ingram some, CJ McCollum some. I mean, even Herb Jones some. But like, there's not that classic setup guy. There's not like your Jokic or whatever to just calm you down in the clutch. And like they could put Trey Murphy out there, and I think he's got to be in a lot of those closing lineups just because of his floor stretching ability. Even though he's a guy who at times can get beat defensively, but like that's absolutely a valid concern. There's just been a lot of moments where this team has looked really shaky, in down the stretch in games this year.
And it's not even if they look shaky. It's do you know what you're aiming at? Do we know who we're going to? And I know that they have some consistent rotations that they go to, but I look at it and I go, okay, you get in a playoff series and they're going to be close in the fourth quarter. Almost every game, you're lucky if you get a blowout one way or the other, but almost every game is going to be close. And you're going to have CJ on the court for sure. He's a lock. You're going to have Zion. He's a lock. And you're going to have Ingram. That's a lock. I feel like those other two spots, you want to pencil Herb Jones in there because he's been there so much. But if you're playing from behind a little bit, I think you might be a little more tempted to go offensive, there. Are you going to go to Big Val? Are you going to play a little bit small? I just feel like we're really deep, not only into this season, but also into this process. And I still look at that and I go, and this is why Trey Murphy is so interesting, is I look at that and I go, I'm not sure Herb Jones is the guy for those moments in every circumstance. And I'm not sure they have a guy that they would say, we want to pencil that in. And that's who our identity is going to be. Where is the pecking order in your mind right now about who those next two guys most likely are going to be?
Well, I mean, like one of the guys is Larry Nance Jr. I mean, just time
Really?
and time again. Oh yeah, the coaching staff has just shown like what they want to do in fourth quarter of games is they want to be able to switch everything. I mean, I think this is like a coaching staff that if they have to choose between offensive and defensive minded players alongside their stars, they more often than not go with the like defensive minded player. I mean, Larry Nance Jr. closed a bunch of games for the Pelicans last year, closed a bunch of them this year. Like even going back to that first round series against the Phoenix Suns, like it was Larry Nance Jr. out there, and the Pelicans going to these switch everything lineups. So like that's a guy who I feel like they're going to put out there. And then you talk about the other guy. I mean, Trey or Herb. I'm a like huge Herb Jones fan. If you got him out there with Larry, I do worry about just the overall lack of 3-point shooting.
Right.
It's kind of just like I guess who's playing better that night. But yeah, I mean, like I think one thing to note about this coaching staff is they're just going to more often than not choose defense as opposed to offense next to the three main guys.
Right. And look, and I see somebody in the chat here says, you're tripping, Herb is a lock. And I agree that he is a lock to play. My thing is the playoffs are different in that when you get down to crunch time, teams are going to it's not just we're sticking to our principles. This is the combo. This is how we guard that combo. And putting Herb on there obviously elevates you defensively in an enormous amount. But I just wonder, a team that already struggles in the clutch, and you're going to have teams especially prepared now for how to guard you in the clutch, and that can be a recipe for disaster. And then I think it's interesting that you bring up the switching part because that is a strength. That is great against the Thunder. It's great against the Suns to have that versatility. It's great against the Clippers. I think it's a weakness against teams like the Nuggets. You don't want to switch and start just say, oh, we have a switchy lineup. We're going to go out there. We just want to do this against teams that are designed to exploit that have very specific size players with different sizes and different spots to exploit it. So I look at that, and this is why I bring it up. The Pelicans are so intriguing because they have so much talent. They don't quite have their identity, in my opinion, just yet. And that identity needs to be not only established, but also versatile enough going into the playoffs. And that's where I just think that they're going to be a little vulnerable.
Yeah, I mean, Adam, that the Jokic triple double stats, I'm sure, like better than anybody. Which team does Jokic have the most triple doubles against in the NBA? He's got one against every team but the Nuggets.
Yeah.
Which team does he have the most against?
Yeah, it's the Pelicans.
Yeah, I mean, because that's what they want to do defensively. They want to switch at those moments, and that Boston game like was just a clinic of like Jokic punishing switches and things like that. But look, it's a good point. I mean, I've been told that like the Pelicans least want to see in the first round is the Nuggets, and like the extent of their analysis was Jokic. He's just too good. Like They just want no part of it. I totally get that. I would love to see New Orleans and Minnesota in the first round. I think it could be really competitive. I also just think it could be hilarious because it's two teams that do make a lot of mistakes like late in close games. So I think the comedy factor could be really high. That's the one I'm personally rooting for.
Let's get to that in a second. I want to circle back to it. The other question I have about them in the playoffs is just the 8 or 9 man rotation. You go to about 8.5 guys in a playoff. Sometimes it'll only be 7. You have your starting 5. You have Trey Murphy, who's been playing incredible. What is the pecking order there for who those top 8/9 would be?
Yeah, I mean, you're starting 5, and then Larry Nance Jr. is definitely a part of that. Trey Murphy is absolutely a part of that. I mean, I think they might look at like Najee Marshall there. I think they could look at Dyson Daniels depending if he is healed up. But that's kind of, I guess, the thing with this team. It's like a lot of the role players are these defensive first players, right? And it's a big reason why the Pelicans are 6th in defense in back-to-back years. It's like they have all these role players who just compete so much on the defensive end. They're smart guys. They're tough, but like when you put them out there next to the stars, do you have enough offense there? Like, is Zion
Right.
able to shoulder enough of the load to just like score enough with those bench heavy units on the floor? Same thing goes for Brandon Ingram.
So let's get to Trey Murphy, because now he becomes the most interesting one to me. You know, he's my guy. We talk about offline all the time about this. He's my guy. And he is the guy to me that is the most two-way. I know that his defense can be a little hit or miss, but he has the length, he has the athleticism. I love his offensive game. I love the way he reads the court and moves off ball. And he's on a little bit of a heater right now, post All-Star break. How good do you think he can be, as a player? Is this a guy that they look at and say, this might be a part of a core, one of our top guys in years to come? Or they view him more as a high-level role player?
Man, that's a great question. I mean, all the word from everybody was like he had this incredible summer, and it was a huge bummer because he, tore the meniscus in his knee right before the season started, and that kind of knocked him out for the first 20 games. Um, I think if you ask some people, they say like fringe star guy, and then other people in the organization, they're like, really nice role player. From what I heard, a little bit of a mix. They're like, my personal opinion, I don't like view him as like a future star or anything. I think my read is like really, really good role player. Like I would worry about like, if Brandon Ingram or Zion wasn't there and you're just asking him to like create. Like I love him
Right.
attacking off with closeouts and second actions and things like that. But like I would be a little bit nervous if I'm like, hey, Trey Murphy, you've got to create offense for everybody else for like 20 to 30 possessions every game. But he's really
Yeah.
good, man. I mean, he's really, really good.
It's almost the Klay Thompson style star, where Klay was also not generating a lot of creation, but his shot making and his ability to play off the shot creators almost augments his gravity. So I could see him growing into that type of role just because I love the way he moves. He's a very fluid off ball mover. I mean, reads the court really well. I'm super high on him, and this playoffs I think could be big for him. If you're buying the Pelicans, here's what I had for why I would buy them. Their starters don't play very many minutes. Relative to the rest of the NBA, you're looking at it, Zion and CJ play 31 minutes a game. There are 4 players on the Suns who play more than that, including Grayson Allen and Bradley Beal. KD and Booker play 37 minutes a game. They play 6 more. So you look at what they've done and you think, okay, Zion's going to play 37 minutes a night in the playoffs. Ingram's going to bump up to that. CJ's going to bump up to that. I think there's reason they've used their depth in the regular season, because you should use your depth, and they have it. But I think in the playoffs, you should look at their best players and say those guys should be on the court a little bit more, doing the things they're best at. Do you buy that argument at all?
Yeah, I think there's absolutely something to that. And I think the question with the Pelicans, like Bob Myers brought this up around the All-Star break. His take on it was the Pelicans and the Knicks are similar in that they have a ton of good players, really good rosters 1 through 10, but he didn't feel like either team had great players. And
Right.
I think based on what we've seen in the regular season so far, Zion and BI, like, we're not all-stars, and I think that was probably deserved. Like, I think there's merit to that argument, but if you're buying the Pelicans, you watch Brandon Ingram play incredible basketball against the Phoenix Suns in the first round a couple of years ago. Like, you've just seen a guy who can really elevate his game when there's a stage, and you're buying that Zion is trending up. I mean, Zion, I think, has been good this season, but I don't think for a lot of the season he was as good as the guy we saw last year who went down before the hamstring injury. There are a lot of signs like the last few weeks that like that top 0.1% athleticism, we're seeing that a little bit more and more. I mean, Zion can always score the ball. I think people really forget that he was an incredible defensive player in college. Like, if you go
Mm,
back and read some of the draft stuff, like from the smart
right.
draft writers, like this guy could compete for defensive player of the years. That has not happened at all. Zion, that defensive playmaking has reared its head a little bit the past few weeks. He just had this road trip where he had 7 blocks, his most
Saw
over a
that.
3-game stretch. I mean, like, really, that bounce that I think like made Zion such a beloved player. You're seeing that a little bit more and more.
So last one then, on the Zion point. Zion is in the best shape he has been in since when?
I mean, post hamstring injury to me. Like, I think the
Okay.
last 2 seasons for Zion, um, he played incredible basketball, 29 games, goes down with this right hamstring injury in like early January of last year, and then misses the final 45 games of the season. I think he came into the season not in great shape, frankly. I think that anybody who watched the Pelicans play the Lakers in the in-season tournament semifinals and like knows what they're looking at. It was just obvious. Like he just couldn't get up and down the court. I mean, that was everyone's takeaway who knows what they're looking at. And I think slowly since then, I mean, I honestly think like getting embarrassed like that on a pretty big stage was probably good for him. Like I think it made him look in the mirror a little bit and be like, oh, I actually do have to be better. I know I'm so gifted, but I can't just show up and like be a great NBA player. I have to put a little bit of the work in. And I think we've seen more consistency with him. I mean, he talked about doing extra conditioning on this last road trip. So I just think we've seen someone who's like a little bit more focused since the in-season tournament.
The West still has a lot of movement that can happen, but if I were projecting, I would say the Pelicans are going to face the Clippers or the Timberwolves in the first round. Just quickly, how do you think those series go if they were to match up?
I know the Clippers, I know they've like cooled off a little bit. I would still be really nervous just because I believe in the Clippers' ability to like execute in the half court. I would really worry about the last, few minutes in games against the Pelicans. I'd probably take the Clippers in like 5 or 6. I think if it was the Timberwolves, man, I think the Pelicans really might have a chance there, especially no Karl-Anthony Towns. Like I think that could be a really long series and one that the Pelicans compete in. And Rudy Gobert is a player the Pelicans, like both Brandon and Zion, have really had some success against over the years. So I think they feel like that's a matchup they like a little bit.
That's an interesting one. Our next guest is Dane Moore, so we'll get his perspective on that same matchup on the other side. Christian, thank you so much for joining me. Everybody, you can read him at NOLA.com. Anything else to plug?
The From the Wing podcast, which I co-host once a week. Thanks for having me, buddy.
From the Wing. There you go, Christian. Thanks so much, brother. All right, let's take a break. On the other side, we have Dane Moore waiting in the wings to talk about the Timberwolves who are falling in the standings. We'll get his take on that. But first, I want to tell you about the Game Time app. If you're looking for tickets to a game this week or this weekend, or maybe it is concert season, spring is here, summer right around the corner, and you want to start making your summer plans, well, hop on the Game Time app. They've got games, they've got events, they've got concerts, they've got everything with the flash deals, zone deals. You can look at your seat. They have the image of your seat, what it looks like, the stage or the court looks like from your seat. And they have that all-in pricing feature, which is really nice, so you don't get surprised with extra fees when you check out. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use our promo code ALLNBA, ALLNBA, for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Also want to tell you guys about DraftKings Sportsbook app. The thrill and excitement of March Madness is here, and DraftKings Sportsbook, one of America's top-rated sportsbook app, is giving new customers a shot to turn $5 into $150 instantly in bonus bets with any college basketball bet. March Madness is the absolute best. You can make the thing about college basketball is you can have a bet coming due. If you just bet money lines, you can have a bet coming due every 15 minutes for like 10 hours. It's the absolute best. It makes every game. If you bet on the spread, it makes every game a lot of fun. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code ALLNBA. New customers bet $5 and get $150 instantly in bonus bets only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code ALLNBA. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit 1-800-GAMBLER.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 and over. Age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.com/promos for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources.
All right, back here, segment 2 of the All-NBA podcast, and I'm now joined by Dane Moore of the very creatively named Dane Moore podcast, Dane Moore NBA podcast. Dane, thanks so much for joining me.
What's up, man? I'm excited to do it. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I can hear you great. You look great. The headphones are great. The light in the back is great. Everything's great, Dane. Not so great, though, the Minnesota Timberwolves injury luck here recently. And my first question here, because we all know the story of the Timberwolves, I don't remember. Do you remember the date when they took over the number 1 seed in the West? Because they have not relinquished it.
Well, right now they don't have it.
For the longest time. They had not relinquished it for the longest time.
Yeah, I think it was probably early November, right?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't have the specific date, but it's been, that's the craziest part about all this is how they've been consistent this season. And this is kind of like the first time where you can reasonably doubt some of that consistency.
So this is the experience. One of the things, Denver, Minnesota, it's been the same. That very shared history there, in terms of the climb is so tough. And I know the feeling of being the number one seed for that long, and then you lose it. You work all year, you're consistent, you do all this stuff, and then one bad week, and all of a sudden you're down in the 3 seed. It's just such a psychological, as a fan, I don't know what it is like for players, but as a fan, it's such a psychological hit. Do you feel the fan base is feeling that psychological hit of, man, it's so hard to gain and so easy to lose?
Yeah, it's just the idea that winning is so hard, right? And winning
Right.
through adversity is like the hardest of the hard, right? And once you kind of get up to this level, which is obviously so new to the Wolves, it's like, man, we had all these things had to go right to get to this point, and now we have to get through adversity so as to be able to sustain it, which is just like kind of the perfect encapsulation of how this whole year has been a learning experience for
Right.
Wolves fans, myself covering a
Yeah.
good team for the first time, really. And then I think for the players too, it's like this, whoa, we got to like play every single night to be able to, compete with the Denvers and the Oklahoma Cities and the Clippers in the West. Yeah, it's been an experience, man. And now we're hitting some turmoil.
The turmoil, though, I think can actually be a good thing for Minnesota. The 1 seed is nice. I think that it can almost be a little overrated, especially as a young team. There might be something nice about sneaking in as a 2 or a 3 seed, lowering expectations almost a little bit. But let's get into some of the details here. I brought this up to you on text the other day. I love TJ Warren. I am like in the 99th percentile of a TJ Warren guy. Now you're trying to steady a ship here. Karl-Anthony Towns is out. We got to find a new identity. I am buying TJ Warren as a short-term solution to a bigger problem here. I know he's only played a handful of games. Tell me why that is or is not crazy that he could contribute since the team needs points.
I think the perfect example is the beginning of the second half in the last game the Wolves played where they lost to the Lakers. They did the kind of the Jokic thing. Remember, we made the really big deal about Rui Hachimura guarding Jokic for like
Yeah.
8 minutes. Yeah, of course you
Yeah.
remember that well. Well, they did that to Naz Reid in the second half of the Wolves Lakers game. They took Davis off of Reid and they put Rui on him so Davis could just kind of chill at the rim. And he was quote unquote guarding Jaden McDaniels.
Right.
Well, Jaden wasn't able to capitalize on that and honestly looked a little kind of stirred by the whole
Right.
being ignored part of that. He took a 3, missed it, tried to then drive to the basket the next time, got blocked by Davis, I think. And about 4.5 minutes into the third quarter, Finch went to TJ Warren over McDaniels because that's what they needed, was somebody who
Right.
could confidently do something offensively, take that corner
Right.
3, be able to create a little bit. And to that end, particularly now without Cat, he's an answer here. They don't have many other answers, but if you're right, I guess that's good news for the Wolves.
Well, I think less as a closing lineup because that would be a bigger contribution than I'm really talking about. I more just mean if you're not going to be able to play the Twin Tower lineups going forward, Naz Reid and Gobert to me are almost not quite a Twin Tower lineup just for whatever reason. So if you're not able to play that, he does to me seem like, okay, that's a piece now that makes rotations make sense because you have a more traditional stretch forward, which against most staggered lineups, he's not a fish out of water guarding whatever that 4 is. Most teams play a TJ Warren caliber or sized guy at power forward in staggered lineups. And that's just why I think he can be a good player. And also, he was a phenomenal player. The last time he was healthy, he's played, I think, 60, what was it? I had it written down here. 49 games in 3 years. He just hasn't played a lot of basketball. But when he did play last, back in 2020, he was unbelievable. He was an unbelievable scorer. So I'm a little high on him. Monte Morris, the other guy I want to talk about here. I know he collected some DMPs. I haven't seen. Is this injury? Is this rotation? Hamstring? Oh, man. And that's a hamstring injury for a guy that missed that much is always tough. So what's the prognosis?
Finch said, I asked him about it on Friday before the Cleveland game. He said it was a day-to-day thing. He didn't play. He didn't play Thursday again, or he got hurt in the Pacers game. Didn't play Friday against the Cavs, and didn't play against the Lakers. He's questionable tonight against the Clippers. But it's kind of interesting about the Wolves is like Finch just kind of chooses like 8 or 9 bodies to play. It's not really like you can have a guard replace a forward's minutes kind of because they have the big look that they can go to. So, I mean, Morris would have helped in that Lakers game, right? Maybe playing him instead of Luka Garza or instead of TJ Warren or something like that. Like, they need as many competent bodies who have kind of been in situations like that. And I think Morris was starting to come along sort of right before he got hurt in that Indiana game. I mean, the biggest thing, Adam, is that they guard him when he, like, they actually stand by him. And that's so big in this Wolves offense, in that for Ant or Cat or Nas now trying to get downhill, there's so many shooters that get ignored, whether it's Jordan McLaughlin in there or we're talking about Jaden. Like, just having a guy that they can't leave in the corner really opens up a lot of things around the basket. So I think he's part of the answer here in the non-cap period for sure.
And perhaps not a coincidence, he's out these last 2 games and they're struggling. So I think there might be something to just how valuable he is. This is a tough question. So I want to get into now, why you buy and why you would sell the Wolves. We'll start with why you sell them. I think it's obvious. They're 24th in clutch offense. They don't look great in clutch moments offensively. Anthony Edwards obviously is an incredible shot maker. But here's my question. What do they look like in the clutch? What are they trying to do on the offensive end? Is there a specific action or tandem they go to? And what do you think they should do? So what do they do, and what do you think they should do in those moments?
I've always been surprised how rarely they go to any sort of 2-man game with Cat and Ant. That has, as great as this season has been, that just hasn't really ever been something that's developed in a volume sort of way. I mean, oftentimes they're using Gobert as the screener rather than, having Cat like pop out of those or slip out of them. But I've always thought that might be part of the answer for getting some better late game offense for this team. But they really run a lot of that get action with Conley and Gobert there. They mix in like the sort of horns look with Ant up at the top and Cat and Gobert and I guess Nas at this point there. But they've never found like the thing, right? It's not kind of like it's the last 5 minutes. And as you know, with like in Denver, you kind of know what they're going to get to. And the Wolves have had a handful of different things, but not one that they go to repeatedly. And then oftentimes, because they don't have that action, it gets sticky, right? It gets, okay, Ant, you go, Cat, you go. And in those times, and with teams loading up on Cat and Ant even more, I mean, it's just led to turnovers. That's where like the poor offensive efficiency comes from, is they just turn the ball over a ton late in games. And it's honestly, like, that's the biggest bummer to me about Cat being out, is I thought if they were able to figure out some of the offense overall, but particularly late in games, how much they figured that out would really determine how far I thought the Wolves would go in the playoffs. Because it's going to be the thing, even if Cat is back for the playoffs, that everyone's going to say it's this late game offense. It's the offense overall that they just haven't figured out over the course of the season. And I think it's fair. I think it's going to be a fair thing to point at if you are picking a Wolves Pelicans series or Wolves whoever in the first round. Is this has been a thing even outside of this season, that the late game offense hasn't been there. They haven't found go-to answers, and you're just kind of hoping for Ant to do what he did in Indiana. But he did that against Indiana. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's different than Cleveland the next night, or even the Lakers the night after that.
It's also just even the best players. This is my problem with the Phoenix Suns. Even the best players, you're expecting them to hit at a rate that is probably even above their own expectations. So that becomes tough. I think you hit on the thing, and Legs and I actually talked about this last week with the Timberwolves. This is the reason I think that I'm so skeptical of them. And I know Timberwolves fans are going to hate this, but this is another one of those things about your learning. As a fan base, you almost learn what the ascension is like, how there's all these little check marks. The Miami Heat are the best team in the NBA at saying the regular season is a giant extended practice, because we want to know exactly who and what we are by the time the playoffs start. And as long as you're in the ring, it doesn't matter. I think the Timberwolves, when I watch them play, they almost are running. They have plays they go to in the crunch. They don't have actions they go to. And what I mean by that is it almost looks like they have a lot of timeouts, a lot of like, all right, we're going to structure and it's going to be this thing. Whereas your best teams in the playoffs seem to know, we do these two guys, or we do this action, and this one, and we can just go to them in a bunch of different sets, but it's always the same thing. And when you have that, it takes oftentimes a whole year to cultivate. It could cost you wins along the way. But then when you get into the playoffs, you know this is the foxhole mentality we have. When we're in the foxhole, we do this, and we've built up those muscles. And I just worry that the Timberwolves don't have those muscles. They have great shot making from Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns. Mike Conley seems to make them whenever he gets a kick out opportunity, but they don't have great actions.
No, I think that's true. And what Finch wants is to do what you're talking about. And they were trying that. And they were trying to organically kind of find those actions that they go to. That Finch doesn't like calling plays. Like he's a flow guy.
Free flow guy, yep.
But it's become, I mean, and last season too, like my frustration in watching the team, particularly last year, was it was very obvious. I thought that they didn't have enough structure in their offense, and they were even just like basic spread pick and roll structure that they weren't a high volume pick and roll team. And I'm like, okay, offense is struggling a little bit. You got Gobert, like you have Ant who can run it, you have Conley who can run it, even D'Lo back then, like and Finch was super resistant to structure. And I say that to mean if he's putting in structure late in games now, it's probably because they really need it. You know what I'm saying? Like when they just try to get to those actions, Ant and Rudy or Cat or whatever, like they were just turning it over too much. And with the structure of more scripted actions, you lose maybe some of that upside, but you're not just giving it to the other team. I'm kind of with it that I think they do need that structure, at least now, until Ant kind of takes that next level up in his own crunch time playmaking, scoring progression for himself.
Well, I would say it's even less the scoring. Here was my note on Anthony Edwards and where he's at right now, and where I think they could afford to, it might be too late in the season, but where they can afford in the future to kind of say, hey, we need you to figure these things out, is he is a great shot maker. He is a great scorer. He is great at just like sort of combo moves, putting a bunch of combos together and then finding a way to the basket. I don't think he's great at setting the floor, meaning I need to move this defender over here. I need to do this and set the table and then attack. And I think those are the types of lessons that the more you orchestrate, the more it's like, okay, well, I'm not in control. The play is in control. Whereas the more you run actions, the more it's like Anthony Edwards is figuring out like, okay, we do this and this guy's always here. So I got to move him out the way and set the table and set things up. That's where I just don't feel like he's reading the second and third, chain reactions to set things up. And again, he's a young player. Most young players don't have this, especially if they're not point guards. Mm-hmm. But I just wonder if the progress on that could have been sped up with a little sacrificing and saying, figure it out. What are you reading? What are you reading?
I think Adams is important to like go back even 2 years, and he was a 0 in this category. And that it was just all new to him. He hadn't had like the experience of it. And when in his, that would have been his second year, when they started putting 2 on the ball, like he was lost. He was really lost. And what he has got to is he's learned that when they put 2 on the ball to get off of it. But I'm totally in with what you're saying. There's like better and worse ways to get off of it to play with that 4 and 3 advantage. And like, if you just get off of it, you get a 4 on 3 advantage, but there's better ways to do it, right? There's like, and maybe the other teammates need to help there to present those situations a little bit more, but it's just kind of like, and it's like, I'm doubled. All right, I don't want it, and now it's somebody else's turn to initiate the offense rather than really creating an advantage. He only really creates that advantage when he can split the double, get downhill. Yeah. The rim protector comes. He's good at finding the corner guys. Like he's got that. And he actually has had that since, Georgia, but I'm with you. There's another level to it that he's still learning, and Finch is trying to, empower in that sort of way, but it's just extra hard when there's not a lot of spacing, and the Gobert nature is going to make it that way to some extent.
There's so many other players I want to get to, but we got to speed along here because I've told you this before. I love Nickeil Alexander-Walker. He's just one of my favorite
Adam
players.
texts me about Nickeil about once a week. Yeah, he does.
I love this dude. I think he's incredible. His shot making, I think, is actually going to be one of the most important X factors for the Timberwolves. Sure. I mean, he doesn't take a ton of them because he doesn't play a ton of minutes. He's not going to take a ton of threes, but he's going to take 4 a game, and you're going to need 2 out of him. A lot of nights to win in the playoffs. So he's going to be a huge X factor. All right, let's go to best matchup here. I think that the Wolves are going to be 3 or 4. I just think that's how it's going to, being shorthanded like that and how tough the West is. I think they're going to be 3 or 4. But who do you most think the Wolves want to avoid in the first round of the realistic teams in that zone?
So are we thinking about this in the idea that Karl's back? Because I think it's kind of different questions.
I think it's under the assumption that if he is back, he is probably going to be a C minus version of himself. So I either Towns out or Towns is a much lower impact player than his peak.
I think the way I would put it is the Wolves, with or without Karl Anthony Towns, can't guard a player like Karl Anthony Towns.
Okay.
Jaren Jackson Jr., Zion Williamson, like they struggle with that big playmaking, scoring four to be able to guard with Cat or without Cat. And I was listening to you with Christian a little bit before I hopped on here, and I've always said the Pelicans are a tough matchup because Zion might be the toughest one in sort of category of guys to guard, and it just puts him in a weird spot of like, all right, is Cat going to guard him? Are you going to put Zion? Are you going to put Rudy on Zion? Okay, now Valanciunas is going to hurt you on the glass. Like they just haven't had answers for that, and I think their best answer is Kyle Anderson for guarding Williamson or that type of player. Now Kyle's playing more, but that part of this here, if you don't have Cat, you kind of remove some of the defensive lackings that he has, and you replace him with Kyle Anderson, who's actually a really good perimeter defender and can even handle some of those bigger guys or limit them as well as anybody else can. Like he's going to be better at that than Jaden McDaniels is at being able to do that. So weirdly, like the Pelicans were a matchup I hated for them, but maybe if Cat's out, they can match up a little bit better in that sort of way. I think the Kings are weirdly difficult for the Wolves in that, it's Nas or Cat at the 4, and they just now need to chase all these shooters. It's like some of the lower teams down there are actually more problematic or have been in the regular season than just Clippers in isolation. Like they've done a great job against the way in which the Clippers play. Celtics kind of play a similar way. The Wolves have so many wing defenders that they're kind of like, okay, like we can reasonably put up resistance against Brown and Tatum and White down the line. They have a lot more answers for just those straight isolation teams, I think, than they do teams that have big fours or teams that make their fours run. I mean, this is the thing with this team, high level, is the 4, right? And the adjustment that Cat made to be able to play that position and make the whole Gobert thing work, but it's still defensively their weak point is their ability to guard 4s and how their 4s are going to guard, which Cat and Nas have both acquitted themselves. They've exceeded expectations in a big way in being able to do that this season. So I don't know. It's hard to say. Like, I don't know this new team yet. I don't know what the Catless Wolves really are. And honestly, Adam, like if he's not back, it just removes so much ceiling that really the season is just about, can we get there as the 3 seed, hope Karl C- version or whatever comes back. But they're not in this class, I don't think, of the Nuggets and the Clippers and the Thunder without Cat.
But they were. I really believe that they were for large stretches of this year. And again, the playoffs are a different beast. I'm not trying to give them credit for something they didn't do, but they were at least.
I was saying without Cat. Does that make sense? Like
no. I understand.
Okay. Yeah.
No, what I'm getting at is they were there for so much of the season, and they look like, okay, you want a team to be on the precipice so you see if they can take that step or not in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. And they were there. Now it's so much more in question. So my last question for you is, what defines success at this point, given all the circumstances? What defines success, and what is the risk? What's at stake for the Wolves, and what do they need to do to make it a success?
So I really don't like the very linear logic of if they lose in the first round, blow it up. Sure. If they go to the second round, maybe. And if they go to the Western Conference Finals, run it back again. Like that's not process. Like I don't think Tim Connolly and everybody in the front office will look at it that plainly, though they have some serious things to assess, particularly with, the luxury tax coming and the idea of not spending all your money before Ants in your prime, whatever. Like there's layers to this thing. I just hope it's all considered in greater context. The Cat injury, this team is injured and fatigued right now. Like, can we consider that for better or for worse? Like maybe ultimately you get to the point of like, oh, this team looked pretty good, but maybe we need to make a long-term decision. Like, I just don't think it should be looked at so simply as how far they go or not. You need to consider what has happened in the course of the season and apply that against the financial restraints of long-term feasibility as it pertains to the luxury tax, which they are rocketing into. And with Ant probably getting all NBA, even more so, headed in that direction. So I don't know, man. it's
I can see the strain in your eyes, though. This is the tough thing. It's almost tough, man, because I feel for you. It sucks. I feel like you had a nice mystery.
I know. And then this happens, and it was already before the cat injury. There was this lingering, are they going to be able to pay $100 million tax bill to keep the roster together? And it's only the first year of it. It's like the roster doesn't all of a sudden dip off and get less expensive afterwards. So it's, terrible time for the second apron and all that stuff to have come in right once the Wolves are right at that point where they're going to be impacted by it. I think some of that stuff's overrated, but broadly, you get what I'm getting at.
Man, Dane, that was tough. I knew I was down on the Timberwolves. I was concerned, but I can tell it's this injury has really just put a damper on the season. You know what though? Thing about injuries today, you never know. Maybe Town surprises us a little bit and comes back stronger. And like I said, suppressed expectations sometimes can be great for a team in that spot.
And Nas, let's go. Let's see it. Let's see Nas in the cat role. And he's, he had 34 in Cleveland and 21 in the first half against the Lakers. Let's let Nas save the day. He might be able to.
He is Dane Moore of the Dane Moore NBA podcast covering the Timberwolves, all things Timberwolves. He is your guy. Check him out. Dane, thanks so much for joining me.
Anytime, man. Love it.
All righty. On the other side, let's get to the Spurs. Look at that transition from super producer Emma. Unbelievable. We now welcome in from ESPN. Do we have you? Let's see if we have your sound here, Andrew. Andrew Lopez. Oh, you have yourself muted. Did you hit the mute button? Let's see if we could figure this out on the fly here. Maybe, maybe not.
What about now?
There it is. We got it. We figured it out. We solved this one.
Look at that magic.
Look at that magic from ESPN covering the Spurs. Andrew Lopez, thanks so much for joining me.
Hey man, thanks for having me. I'm just glad I went after Christian Clark so the show can get better as we go on. You go from Christian to Dane to that's perfect.
Total elevation, man, the whole way, of course. The Spurs this year are the most interesting 14-win team in the history of the NBA. That's how I'm going to start this one. Is I find it funny, and it's just a mark of our time, that we're talking about a generational talent in Victor Wembanyama, which he absolutely is, and we're talking about a team that wins in the 1 percentile of teams across NBA. But it's true. Have you found? This is your first year on this beat. Have you found this to be an especially compelling season for you?
Yeah, it really has been. One, just watching Vic every night is just insane. It really does feel like, and I think I've said this before, it's almost like, there's a saying, if you go to a baseball game, you could see something you've never seen because of the way it's scored or some. I feel that way when I watch Victor play basketball.
Yeah.
Whether it's pinning a guy's shot against a backboard or something he does offensively, it just, you have this feeling of just, he can do stuff that nobody has ever done. So there is that element to it where every night is compelling because what's going to happen? You don't know. He can do something. There's 2 to 3 times a night where I just start laughing at something he does on the court, whether it's a block, an offensive move, and you're just like, what did I just see? And so from that side, yes, the wins have just not been there. And I think it's in part because they're just they were for most of the season, a terrible third quarter team. They're still very much kind of going through some growing pains. Some of that is because frankly, they let Vic do what Vic wants to do on the offensive side. So there's still some growth to be had there, but you see the bits and pieces of where this team can go. And obviously everything just kind of starts with Vic.
Let me start on that question, though, about Wembanyama. What do you mean they let him do what he wants to do on the offensive end? What does that entail?
He has this freedom that I think maybe he wouldn't have if, say, the team was competing for a play-in spot or competing for a playoff spot. He's got a little bit of extra of freedom to do some different things. And I think we definitely saw that first 20 to 25 games of the season where there were a lot more, pull up threes. There were a lot more just, okay, I can get the rebound and boom, boom, boom. I think we looked at this in December. I hadn't looked at it before, but there was a point where his rebound to shot, it was like the quickest in the NBA for a team to just in terms of shot clock possession. Like he was firing up shots. And it wasn't until later on that they were like, maybe we should see. But to his credit, Greg Popovich said, look, we're going to give him the first 20 or so games to see, hey, what is he like? What can he do? And then that's when you started to see the efficiency go up. In February, he was one of the best jump shooters in the NBA, period.
Right.
So you see that from him now, and I think you're starting to see the next step of Victor Wembanyama and just how much he's going to be able to do within within the offense.
That's part of what's so fascinating to me about this year is it does feel like the Spurs have treated it as an experiment of like, let's see if he does this. Let's see if he does this. Let's throw him all around the different places. And, in the back half of the year, they've obviously zeroed in a little bit more on it. So and try to do more of that. Let me ask this. What kind of matchups does he seem to struggle with? Now that we've learned sort of these things, like what is the type of player he's not been good against?
It's been the physical guys. And that's he's just got to get stronger. And I think the one, obviously, and let's go back to the Şengün matchup first, because I think that's the one time where I think a lot of people saw him struggle for the first time. Yeah. And I'll say this. The first quarter of that game the other night, and this is when Şengün had 45 and just absolutely bullied him in the second half. The first quarter of that game, the first shot Şengün has, Vic blocks it off the glass. The rest of that quarter, Şengün was a little hesitant to kind of go at him. It was when he realized that he rolled the ankle, was dealing with a hip and a back, and he realized, oh, Vic can't jump.
Right.
I'm going to have fun.
Interesting.
And that's when he proceeds to just go crazy in that half. But it has been guys who have been more physical with him. And I think sometimes you've seen teams go with, all right, maybe we're not putting our 5 on him. Let's put a Lou Dort or Jalen Williams. Oklahoma City has done that. Even though we all want to see this Chet Wemby get going thing, we don't really see Chet versus Wemby that much just because they have better matchups for him. So we saw that with Lou. We saw that with Jalen Williams. Teams who kind of can do that to him start to affect him a little bit. And you think, man, Vic's just having a bad night. And then you look up and he's got 22, 12, and 3 blocks. And you're like, oh, this is a normal night now for a guy who's averaging 20, 10, 3, and 3. And you're like, this just doesn't make as much sense as I thought it did. But for the times that he does struggle, it is guys who get just a little bit more physical with him.
He is going to be so hard to grab. I mean, Jokic has this, Luka Doncic has this, Giannis can have this, where you can put up a crazy stat line and have a bad night. And it's just, they're going to be cursed with it. He's going to be cursed with it. In that the expectations are just going to be so high, but you are right. You can look up and say, man, he wasn't that good tonight. What do you have? 20, 14, 6, and 3. Like, okay, well, I guess I was wrong.
I am guilty of it several times this year. Right?
Here's the big question facing the Spurs, and really why I thought, because the reason we had it, I think the Wolves are one of the most interesting teams. I think the Pelicans are one of the most interesting teams, and I think the Spurs are one of the most interesting teams. That's why I wanted to have you all of you guys on. Here's the big question, though. What have we learned about how to build around Victor Wembanyama? Because one of the big questions is, do they go all in? He looks like he is talented enough that if you wanted to make a big trade and bring in some veteran players, you could do it. But the reason I think you would maybe not do that right now is, are you sure you know what kind of player you're supposed to put around him, what kind of team? So your best guess based on what you've learned, let's start with the front court. What kind of front court player is best next to Wembanyama?
It's hard to say because it's the guy who I think every team wants, but there's like 5 of them in the NBA total is a 5 who can be a 4 defensively and a 5 offensively, who can shoot threes and do all this. I mean, you're like, oh, let me just create a player, and you're like, let me just create the best possible 5 possible. You know what I mean? So it's going to be. We saw that early in the season. They put him at the 4, and they put him in lineups next to Zach Collins, and because of the way Zach was shooting. Because of the way Vic was shooting, that lineup did not work. Both of them were under 30 from 3 for a good portion of the season. Vic didn't have the space to operate. Vic needs space on that end of the floor. Obviously, you're going to fill him with shooters. It's going to be kind of like Giannis, where you want shooters around him. Right. It's the guy who is playing next to him though immediately has to be a different thing. One thing that I'm very interested in, they started the year with Jeremy Sohan at point guard.
Right.
That experiment failed.
Yeah.
Miserably.
Yeah.
I still like Jeremy as a long-term fit, but maybe Jeremy becomes the 5 and is Draymond-like.
Right.
In terms of a connector. I don't want to compare him to Draymond, in everything that Draymond does, because it's hard to look. Draymond is what he is, but that connector who can, guard the other team's best player, but still, whether it's post or perimeter, but be the guy who can kind of facilitate on the offense as his vision improves. Maybe that's the kind of 5, if we're going to call it that stays next to a guy like Vic long term, because there's just only so many guys. I mean, granted, it seems like every 7-footer who comes in the league now can shoot. Right. So maybe things do get better down the line. But I think for now, that maybe what you need in terms of a front court guy next to him.
Here's the guys I think, and again, they're all tough. I think they're all tough molds. I think an Aaron Gordon type. Again, yeah. How many of this type are there?
Right.
I think that's the type of mold of player though that they could eat. And what it is super athletic, big enough that you can't just say, oh, we're going to put a small guy on him. In the last segment, we were talking about how much I love TJ Warren, a guy that's too big for TJ Warren, too big for Otto Porter, too big for the stretch 4s teams like to throw, too big for that, who is super athletic and then switchable, versatile defensively. When we were talking about the Thunder a couple weeks back, I mentioned Tari Eason. If I could pair somebody next to Chet, it would be Tari Eason because he's so hyper athletic. He's a great defender, can guard the perimeter. But then you're going to have teams that match up with, Chet and Tari Eason. I think you could say the same for Wembanyama. They're such big players, one tall, one strong, that you can't just go small. You can't just use a stretch because they're both going to have mismatches if they get matched up on it. So to me, I look at it and I say, that's the type. John Collins is this type of player, a hyper athletic, big bodied 4 that is mobile enough out on the perimeter.
Yeah, no, and I think mobile enough on the perimeter and able to shoot is I think the keys. And anybody you put next to Vic is going to be able to shoot just to give him that space that he wants to operate. But I think the good thing about Vic is he is such a willing passer. And I mean, you see this with Yoke all the time. He is such a willing passer that he's going to make the best play, whether or not it's for him or not. Right. There's been times where I've seen, because of a switch, say he's got a 6'3", 6'4", 6'5" guy on him, where there are times where he realizes, oh, I'm a foot taller than you. I can turn around and just drop it in. But he's smart enough to realize that, okay, I've got a small on me. As soon as I make a move, the double's going to come. And then I'm going to have somebody open for 3. He's done that with Devin a bunch of times. It was a specific game against the Pels where I think he might have had Jose on him, of all guys. So he knew it was coming right away. And instead of just trying to, fade away or take a 16-footer over Jose, which I love Jose, but that's not a contest for Victor Wembanyama. Yeah. But he just knew, okay, if I make this move, I move the defense here, Devin's going to have a wide open 3. That's a better shot. So having a guy who I think is uber athletic, he would also enjoy that. He likes throwing lobs. He can do stuff like that. He's such a willing passer that I think that works for him in
This is always a tough question because, like, when you say untouchable, that doesn't imply you're trying to trade a guy. It means you would never trade the guy. So I don't know. Are Devin Vassell and Sohan, are those guys untouchable, or are those guys that it's like, yeah, they're not making calls on those guys? I don't even want to know what the Spurs are doing. I more just mean conceptually. Are those guys that you look at and say, yeah, that's part of the 5-man lineup we want to move forward with? Or are those guys that are like, they're good, but if we lost them, there's other options?
So early in the season, we were having these conversations of, in 4 years, if Vic's the best player in the world, if and all things go right in Spurs land.
Right.
Who on this team is left? Who on this team is on that team?
Right.
And I think my number one answer right now, and I've flopped on this a couple of times. One, I think my number one answer might be Trey Jones, just because I think Trey Jones is like a Spurs lifer who just never
Okay.
leaves. More than anything
Right.
else, like he
Yeah. I'm
can start,
with
he
it.
can back up. He's just there. Of the other guys, though, I think it's Devin. I like Devin's contract for them. I think it's a good number, but I don't know if anybody else on this roster is a quote untouchable. But again, I don't think that they're necessarily going out and they're not going making calls to say, "Hey, you want Devin Vassell? Hey, do you want Jeremy Sohan? Hey, do you want Devin?"
Right.
You know what I mean? But if an improvement came along that was so good that you're like, man, it's going to cost us Dev, but like,
Yeah.
but we can get X, guy who is a potential All NBA player this year. You know what I mean? I mean, it's not to name any names, but you know that level of guy. I think that's where maybe you look into that. But I think Dev is as safe as anybody else could be on this roster because of his skill set. I think what we've seen in the last month from Devin, also as a facilitator, has been a step up.
Right.
I thought he was a guy who could shoot 40% this year, and then he had an adductor issue that kind of put him back a little bit. Numbers dipped. It's going back in the right direction, but I think they see him as him and Jeremy as long-term pieces, as they do with Keldon Johnson, who could end up being their sixth man for a while. But all of those guys, I think, still need to take significant steps for this team to, along with adding other pieces, for this team to be a team that can compete for, just playoff berths more than anything else.
Roster construction of the NBA is harder than people realize. And I think you always think, okay, if you push your chips in, they have 1 million picks, they have these young players. If you push your chips in, are you ruining your future? And I think that's fair. You could argue that Cleveland did this around LeBron. They moved too quickly. They thought LeBron's ready. Let's go now. You could argue that the Mavs did something similar around Luka. There's teams that have done this, but I think
Anthony
it's
Davis and the
discounted.
Pelicans.
Anthony Davis and the Pelicans for sure, another one. And I think these are all good because they're like mid or small markets, as similar to San Antonio, where you can't count on these lucky breaks in free agency or what have you. So there's that part of it where everybody understands. But I think what people discount is the slow approach also works about as well as or misses about as much as any other roster building. There's a lot of teams that slow play their hand, never quite get over the hump, and all of a sudden you're 4 years, 5 years into the player's development, and you're like, yeah, but we're not better. We're not the way we thought we were going to be around him just through a player development. So I think this is my thing, is I think both things are a risk. And I think that they're going to have to be very shrewd in figuring out what types of players they're targeting, and then just get those whether they're young or old.
Yeah, I think one thing that helps when you're in a situation like this is sometimes that you can bank on other teams being bad for you. To help you out. So
Right.
by controlling all of your own picks,
Right.
okay, if I'm gonna swing a deal for whoever it is, all NBA player X, and I'm gonna send 4 picks, I could send my own picks, and then I still have three Atlanta picks waiting for me. I have another Toronto pick this year. I have another, not that you trade your pick this year, but you have all these other assets that you can kind of bet on, while still, going on your upward trajectory. We've seen it kind of how it played out in Oklahoma City. They've taken significant jumps. I think we haven't seen the significant jumps this season necessarily with the Spurs like they many have. I mean, you went 22-60 last year. You add Victor Wembanyama. Nothing else really changes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're likely to finish with a worse record. I mean,
Right.
that part is a little concerning about how, and then while he's averaging 20, 10, 3 and 3.
I think some of this is by design, though, don't you think? Some of this is they could have won more games.
I don't think
it's
it's
trying to do. Yeah.
Before the season, they said this year's going to be more about winning than development. And I don't think they thought that they were going to be in a play-in or anything like that, but I don't think they thought they were going to be worse.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? I think they were thinking, okay, we can win 28 to 30 games and step up.
Yeah.
They've had so much. Some of it's bad luck. They've been so bad in the third quarter during that 18-game losing streak.
That's a young
like,
team trait.
I think they lost like 32 of their first 33 third quarters.
Oh man.
Like it was
That's rough.
130-1.
Yeah.
in their first like 32. It was something ridiculous like that. And it was just like,
Yeah.
some of it I think is, and Pop has talked about this a lot this year of, we're trying to teach guys and put them in the right scenarios and let them make decisions on the fly. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I think they thought they'd be better this year, but I think because of the assets that they have coming from other places, you can kind of, or maybe we take a small jump here. Maybe it's a pick and a half, a pick and a second, right. I guess would be a pick and a half.
A pick and a half, yeah.
I'm picking we should just start doing that. If you're trading seconds, they're half picks.
Yeah, they're half picks. How
much did he cost? He cost 2.5 picks. I'm like, what? What the hell does that mean? But I think they can start to be selective, and I don't think they lead to, like, they don't need to go all in right away. But Vic has been so good that I think you can. Yeah. Pop talks about not skipping steps. I think you can take a very significant step this offseason if you desire to do so.
He is Andrew Lopez. I appreciate you hopping on, covering the Pelicans for covering the Spurs for ESPN. It's gonna be, the best job in the world, man. You got. I think it's going to be interesting for years and years to come, man. Vic, I was skeptical early on. I'm still a little skeptical of his offense, to be honest with you. I think there's some things he's going to have to unlock, but the floor for this guy is clearly going to be superstar. So that's a pretty good floor to start out from.
And yeah, I am very much looking forward to watching what he can do for the next however many years they let me do it.
Sounds good, man. Everybody, thanks so much for hanging out. We got Wednesday off tomorrow, but Legs is back with me on Thursday and some really good games coming up Wednesday night. So we'll have no shortage of things to talk about. Thanks for hanging out with us. Hit that like button before we be on the way out. We'll see you Thursday.
All silly like the mayor.